r/AskReddit by Reddition. Like and subscribe. What are some ridiculous history facts? In 1895, the entire state of Ohio had only 2 cars. Both cars managed to still smash into each other. 101 years ago, a massive tank of molasses burst open in Boston, causing a sticky wave that killed 21 people and injured well over 100. The Great Molasses Flood spread at about 35 miles per hour. Abraham Lincoln's son, Robert Todd Lincoln, was present at 3 different presidential assassinations. After McKinley, he decided not to accept any more invitations. When Alexander the Great was a child, he was reprimanded by a teacher for wastefully throwing 2 whole fistfuls of rare incense into a sacrificial fire. When he was an adult and captured Gaza, which happened to be the prime agricultural source of the incense he wasted, he sent home 18 tons of it home to the same teacher as a gift. The first known political cartoon is Egyptian and shows Hatshepsut, the only woman pharaoh, pegging her lover and chief architect Senmut. The entire country of Malta was awarded the George Cross for its efforts in World War II. It's still on their flag. Karl Marx's great-great-grandson has a YouTube video of him doing parkour called !Marx. Former US President Andrew Jackson was approached by a man who pulled a gun on him. Smaller history fact: this was the first assassination attempt on a US president. The man pulled the trigger and the cap went off, but the gunpowder failed to light. The man pulled a second gun and fired, but the gunpowder again failed to light. The assassin tried to get away, but not before Andrew Jackson got him and beat the shit out of him with a cane. Potatoes were not very popular as a food in France. Like they were seen as fit only for animals. Not only that, but they were considered generally not digestible by humans. So a pharmacist named Parmentier knew they were good food and wanted to popularize them among the working class. So he got a 2-acre farm to grow potatoes and placed armed guards around it at all times. People assumed armed guards meant something very valuable was growing there, so they began to steal the potatoes. That's how potatoes became popular in France's working class. During the Cold War, there was an idea to drop XL condoms labeled medium onto the Soviets to make them think we were anatomically superior and be more afraid of fighting us. Easily my favorite part of American history. Whoops, I dropped my monster condom for my Magnum dong. American military members were also killed during the nuclear bombings of Japan. When American High Command was informed of their presence, their response was something like, "Targets remain unchanged." Pepsi once had the 6th largest military in the world after the price of Russian vodka couldn't cover their deal for Pepsi products. So they traded 17 submarines, a frigate, a cruiser, and a destroyer for a trade deal. Fun fact, the president of PepsiCo at the time told the national security advisor, "We are disarming the USSR faster than you are." Hitler, Stalin, Trotsky, Freud, and Tito were all living in the same area of Vienna in 1913. General Omar Bradley was stopped by military police during the Battle of the Bulge in WW2 due to them thinking he was an Nazi infiltrator. The irony was that he was stopped because he correctly identified the capital of Illinois as Springfield when the officer thought it was Chicago. Montenegro technically was in war with Japan for 101 years and they signed a peace treaty in 2006. Montenegro was allied with Russia in Russo-Japanese War and they declared war on Japan, but they forgot to peace. In 1967, Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt disappeared while swimming in the ocean. He was presumed drowned, so naturally that year we named a swim center after him in memoriam. Once Franklin D. Roosevelt died, Truman didn't know about the Manhattan Project, but when he found out he subtly tried to tell Stalin they were working on something big. Stalin was like, "Yeah dude, I knew before you did." Since he had so many spies in America. Henry Cavendish. The man who was vital in the discovery of gases and discovered hydrogen. He inherited a ton of money from his uncle and built a special castle, I think. He was incredibly introverted, so it was designed so that he never had to meet or see any of his servants. He communicated with them through notes only. He did, however, appreciate other scientists coming to visit and talk. His works mostly came after his death, of course, but I found this guy interesting. Hannibal's defeat of the Romans at Lago Trasimeno. By leaving soldiers to light fires in the hills, he created the illusion that his army was 3 days' march away, when tens of thousands of men were actually concealed in the hills just above the lake. The Romans were surprised on the shore and trapped between the onslaught and the water. In their armor, half of the 30,000 Roman troops were either killed in battle or drowned in the lake. 5,000 were captured, and the other 10,000 staggered back to Rome, creating panic that the greatest army in the world had just been handed their ass by a Carthaginian upstart. It was the greatest ambush in military history. During the Viking era, there was a leader named Sigurd. He allied with a Viking warlord named Thorstein. He wanted to conquer more land and expand his territory. He had already been very successful in doing so. This was until he feuded with another leader called Marl Bucktoothed or Marl Tusk, as his front 2 teeth were abnormally large and buck-toothed. They decided to settle their matters on the battlefield and both agreed on bringing 40 men each for the battle. However, Sigurd ignored the terms and brought 80 men. Bucktoothed had realized he had been betrayed, but did not give up. They killed a number of Sigurd's men, but alas, they were overpowered and were all killed. Here's the catch: after the battle, Sigurd ordered his men to behead all the enemies and tie them to their saddles as trophies. However, as Sigurd rode home in victory, the severed head of Bucktoothed pierced his leg, which led to an infection, killing him soon after. In ancient Egypt, servants were smeared with honey to attract flies away from the pharaoh. The state of Washington was named Washington instead of Columbia, so that it wouldn't be confused with the District of Columbia, as it was commonly known at the time. There used to be bread stamps burned into a cooked loaf of bread to avoid bread fraud, as the government supplied the wheat/flour, but some bakers tried to use sawdust and other ingredients in the bread to make the wheat last longer. The bread stamps were baker specific, so they could track down where any tainted bread came from. If they were caught, they had to move to another town to make bread, or wait 3 years to continue making bread, if I remember correctly. Colombia has a period in history literally called the dumb homeland period, because of how incredibly dumb politicians acted at the time. Before Abraham Lincoln became a politician, he was a champion wrestler. With more than 300 bouts under his belt, Lincoln only lost one match in his career, and was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in 1992. Herostratus is the guy who burned down the Temple of Artemis. The only reason he did it was to have his name written down in history. At one time there was not only a pope and an anti-pope, but also a counter-anti-pope. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day. July 4th, 1826. The 50th anniversary of them both signing the Declaration of Independence. Adams's last words were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." He was wrong by about 5 hours. The first bomb dropped on Berlin by the British during WW2 claimed no human casualties. But it did kill an elephant. Pythagoras drowned a student to death because the student proved the existence of irrational numbers which contradicted Pythagoras and his cults, the Brotherhood, beliefs. Well, flip his stupid theorem then. The Battle of Bull Run, during the American Civil War, was called the Picnic Battle because so many civilians from Washington went on picnics on the sidelines and watched. But once the battle actually started, and the Union started to get its ass kicked, they all ran away, running over injured soldiers and dead bodies, and generally disrupting the battle. This was actually a relatively common thing during the Civil War. I know it happened at Gettysburg too. Claudius Drusus died in AD 20 from asphyxiation when he tossed a pear in the air and caught it in his mouth. The pear tree was put on trial, found guilty of murder, and destroyed. When the Romans laid siege to Themyscira, a real place weirdly enough, they attempted to tunnel into the city. The Themyscirans released bears into the tunnels. Ancient Greek and Roman marble statues were actually originally painted and were colorful. A lot of the statues' paint faded away and went away over time. Some people cleaned off the paint thinking it was debris or dirt, and other people just plain cleaned and removed all of the paint off of them because they preferred the look of white marble. Rome was actually a very colorful city, and it wasn't all made of just boring plain white marble. There are literally entire books of anecdotes of this sort on Ben Franklin. That man was the OG of trolling. He was so good at trolling under the pen name of a female, Silence Doggett, he received several marriage proposals. Only then did he reveal her true identity. As Saint Lawrence was roasted to death on a gridiron, he is said to have remarked to his torturers, "I'm cooked on this side, turn me over." Saint Lawrence is a patron saint of cooks and comedians. The death of Cato. He killed himself by ripping out his internal organs one by one. The shortest war occurred between Zanzibar and the British Empire, lasting around 45 minutes. The British once sent a guy to China as a spy, so he would uncover the secrets of making tea. When the Netherlands was occupied by Renaissance in 1940, many people fled to Canada, including Princess Juliana of the Netherlands and her husband Prince Bernard of Lippe-Beesteveld. Their daughter, Princess Margriet, was born in Ottawa. Not knowing if the baby would be male, and hence the heir to the throne, Canada declared the maternity ward of the Ottawa Hospital extraterritorial, which means it became international territory. This meant that the baby would derive its nationality only from its mother, making it 100% Dutch. Ancient Romans would put sandals on the hands of sleeping people, then tickle their face, so they would slap themselves. At US President Andrew Jackson's funeral in 1845, his pet parrot had to be removed because it was swearing. The longest ever US presidential inauguration speech was made by William Henry Harrison on March 4, 1841. The day had terrible weather, yet Harrison chose to deliver his speech nonetheless, running 8,445 words. In fact, the speech was so long and the weather so terrible that Harrison caught pneumonia and died on April 4, making him the shortest reigning US president ever. During the most critical portion of World War II, the Japanese thought they had sunk or disabled 3 American carriers when, in reality, they had only bombed the USS Yorktown 3 times. They were caught with their pants down when the bombs started landing at Midway. The Olympics used to award medals for art pieces. Famous sculptors of the time would display their sculptures for prizes. Hitler's number 3 in command, Rudolf Hess, ditched his to Bf-110 fighter plane over Scotland and parachuted into enemy territory in order to try and negotiate peace behind Hitler's back. Hess maintained his course using paper maps and landmarks while avoiding both German and British air defenses. He parachuted onto a field on which a farmer was plowing his land. The farmer, not recognizing Hess, took him into his home and offered him some tea. The Byzantine Empire, last remnant of the Roman Empire, fell in 1453, just 40 years before Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. The Roman Empire lived at the same time as the Macedonian Empire and its successors, and continued to live at the same time as the Aztecs and Inca. A very high-ranking Nazi, Ernst Röhm, was gay, was killed 1934, and Hitler knew about it, but it didn't bother him. Funny how homosexuals were then put in concentration camps. By the time the can opener was invented, the can and the process of canning goods had already been around for almost 100 years. Emperor Caligula of Rome declared war on Neptune. He had his troops randomly throw spears into the sea and collect seashells as war trophies. I think they just had too many spears. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more daily Reddit videos.